start?
네, 여러분들 반갑습니다. 다음 연사 인터뷰 진행할 텐데요. 여러분들 이 연사분은 경제학자이시자 달러 크라이시스의 저자이시기도 합니다. 미국 출신의 투자 전략가이시자 이코노미스트로 굉장히 활동하고 계시는 분인데요. 바로 리처드 덩컨 씨입니다. Hello, Mr. Duncan.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Very, very good. How's Asian Leadership Conference so far?
It's great. Yesterday was absolutely amazing. We had so many world leaders and very famous economists speaking all in one day.
I mean, you're also very famous too, right?
I learned a tremendous amount.
Right. So is this your first time visiting Korea?
No, I've lived in Asia for most of the last 30 years.
Wow,
so I've been to Korea a dozen times or more.
So can we say Korea is the most favorite Asian country that you can say?
My favorite Asian pop stars, for sure.
Okay. All right. When we think of economy, sometimes it's very hard. Like we have to study. I mean, if we go to college, I mean, we have the economics class and all this, but then it really doesn't come to us in real life. So, in order to get the interest, like what should we start? Where should we start first? Observing economy.
Well, it's not very difficult to understand macroeconomics. Every economy is made up of just a few parts. How much people spend, how much businesses invest, how much the government invests, and net trade, or exports minus imports. So if you can get those four things right, you can understand whether the economy is going to grow or contract.
Right. But then if that's that simple, if the formula is that simple, then why is it so hard for us to live in this society?
Well, I don't think it's always so difficult to forecast which way the economy is going to grow, but it is quite difficult to manipulate these four things to ensure that it continues to grow on a sustainable basis.
Okay. Well, you're very well known for forecasting the future economy. So where do you get those analysis? Like, how do you predict the future? I mean, it's not like, you know, you're forcing like fortune tellers, but you actually have the analysis, right? So how do you analyze the future?
Well, I think my advantage is that I've realized how important credit and credit growth has become in driving economic growth, especially in the years following the breakdown of the Bretton Woods system. So if you understand that credit growth drives economic growth, and if you can predict how much the credit is going to grow by, then you'll have a very good idea of what's going to happen to the economy. And so that's what I focus on in my work at Macro Watch.
Okay. We got some questions beforehand. Okay. And then one person asked, what do you think is the biggest task for Korea in this world economic recession?
The biggest task for Korea.
Like, what should we do in order to overcome this recession?
Well, Korea, although it's been phenomenally successful, is still a relatively small economy relative to the US or Europe or China. So perhaps Korea's task is in bringing together events like this where we can discuss ways to improve the global economy, perhaps as a thought leader or in generating ideas and forums where we can come up with a solution. And I think this conference has been brilliant in taking us a step forward.
Okay. Rising China, that's the hot potato in Asia, actually all over the world, right? So now we can just not look at China when we talk about economy.
Right.
So, what is there anything you could say about Chinese economy? Some people say, yeah, they are growing, but it's also a bubble in there. So, how do you predict the China's economy?
Right. So, just after we finish speaking, I'm going to take part in a debate about China's economy, up or down, and I'm afraid that I have to conclude that China's economy is going down.
All right.
In fact, China's economy, as far as I can tell, the Great China Boom ended last year. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, it really doesn't matter how much China's GDP is growing. What matters to the rest of the world is how much Chinese imports are growing.
Okay.
And last year, China's imports shrank by 17%.
Wow.
So that's a hard landing by anybody's definition. and they're continuing to contract this year every month compared with last year. So China is already having a hard landing. The only question is how much harder it's going to become.
Right. Well, if China falls, would that impact Asia and this not actually all the world? Because Chinese are actually impacting a lot of countries right now. So people are worried if Chinese market falls, then it will impact many countries. So how do you say that?
Absolutely. Everyone should be worried because, as I said, last year Chinese imports contracted by 17%.
Right.
And so that's why global commodity prices crashed. And that's why the currencies of the commodity producing countries crashed. That's why Brazil is now in the worst depression in 100 years. So the hard landing in China is already dragging the global economy into recession. The question is how much longer it's going to last. And we were told last week by an authoritative figure in the People's Daily that China would have an L-shaped recovery. L. Japan's been in an L-shaped recovery for 26 years.
So that's not a good sign.
No, that's not a good sign. So this is a very serious global problem.
Wow. Okay. So you say you're going on a debate right now after this?
Yes.
So what are you going to emphasize the most during the session?
The real problem in China is that the level of investment is extraordinarily high relative to any other country in the world or in history, and particularly relative to the amount of consumption that is occurring in China. So China invests so much more than it consumes. Now, consequently, well, in the past, it was able to export all of this surplus production, but now the global economy is too weak. So last year, China's exports actually fell by 9%. So China is now stuck in a situation where it has just massive, mind-boggling excess production capacity across every industry you can imagine. And so it's pointless for them to invest more because they already have too much of everything. The companies are becoming increasingly loss-making. The non-performing loans in the banking system are beginning to soar. And so they've hit the point now where the more they invest, the more they lose, the more money they lose, the more wealth and deposits they destroy.
But then I also actually looked at the comments. One of them said, is that has to do with the form of government? Because their government is very different than US, and then they're a very closed market, although they're trying to open up the market. So in order to increase those export and import at the same time, what should they do as a politically, is there something that they need to do in order to recover those markets? Or can they just stabilize by keeping the same format of the government? Or
well, I would say that their form of government has actually been very advantageous for their development over the last 30 years. It's much easier to drive through very rapid economic growth and change when you don't have to stand for election every 2 or 4 years.
Right.
And their leadership has been very capable, although they have allowed this very, very large economic bubble to form. Now going forward, so I don't really think that the leadership, the form of government has been a disadvantage to them. And I think now though, what needs to be done is, rather than trying to solve this on a nation-by-nation basis, all the countries in the world need to work together to solve this global problem. Because we do have a problem globally. There's too much production and not enough income to absorb it all. So this is not a problem that can be solved by any one individual country. We need to cooperate, rather than allowing globalization to break down into protectionism, trade wars, contracting trade, and depression. We need to prevent that at all costs and find a way to make global demand grow to absorb the existing capacity so that we can continue to grow globally and prosper together.
Right, that is actually a good point. Is there a last thing that you want to say to our Facebook Live fans before we finish our interview?
Oh, well, yes, I'd like to say please visit my website, richardduncaneconomics.com, and there you can watch lots of my videos, Macro Watch videos, and sign up for my free blog.
Yeah, everyone follow his website. Thank you so much for your interview. I wish you the good luck in that session.
Thank you.
And you are watching 2016 Asian Leadership Conference. Thank you so much. This was Hajun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.